In the cold hush between stars, the galaxy bled slowly. Two empires, ancient beyond reckoning, locked in a war that neither could remember how to end. The Zerrin Ascendancy, masters of genetic precision and mathematical warfare, carved their fleets from planets like sculptures of living metal. The Valkyrie conclave, more zealotry than state, channeled consciousness into swarms of synthetic avatars, believing in a manifest destiny etched in fire. They had fought for so long that even the reasons had turned mythic. Only victory mattered. Now victory or extinction dot between them. The void whispered rumors of peace, always broken, always false. The most recent armistice was signed on a derelict moon with walls still scorched from the last peace meeting. Neither side trusted the other. Neither believed the ink would dry before another star fell. But they signed anyway. A pause and a scream, not silence. And while titans clashed in distant quadrants, Earth quiet, green, barely a century into faster-than-light navigation, watched with wary eyes. Humanity, a new voice in the chorus, was underestimated, ignored, not because they lacked courage or will or cunning, but because they were small, newborns in a galaxy of gods. Still they listened, and what they heard terrified them. A signal intercepted near the neutral fringe, encoded in Valkyrie logic, laced with Zerrin quantum echoes. It spoke of something buried, something awakened. A weapon, perhaps, or worse, a choice. The kind that ends wars not with fire, but with transformation. So Earth did the unthinkable. They sent him. Commander Elias Rourke had once stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, the youngest to ever command an Earth fleet. Battle-hardened, decorated, widely feared. He had seen the edge of annihilation and walked away, and he had failed. On Velth Prime, he chose what no commander should have to: sacrifice the colony or risk a total fleet loss. He made the call. The fleet survived. 42,000 civilians did not. He retired 1 week later, not by choice, but under political fire down. 5 years later, they wanted him back. They didn't send soldiers to retrieve him. They sent envoys. 2 diplomats, 1 analyst, and a letter of absolution. It didn't matter. He burned it after reading the first line. He didn't return because he was forgiven. He returned because he couldn't sleep. The diplomatic station hung like a knife in space, balanced perfectly between Zerrin and Valkyrie borders. Neutral ground as neutral as anyone could believe, which was to say, not at all. It shimmered with alien tech humanity barely understood. Synthetic gravity-shaped, bilinguistic code, walls that resonated with spoken intent. Every step Elias took on its surface felt like stepping into someone else's dream. The Zerrin delegation arrived, first smooth-skinned beings of deep amethyst tones, eyes glinting like prisms. Their robes moved as if underwater, the fabric reacting to unseen frequencies. Then came the Valkyrie, or rather their husks. No flesh, only architecture. Living war machines, piloted by minds scattered across the void, peering through shimmering obsidian masks. When they entered, the walls hummed. In discomfort, Elias stood between them like a shadow misplaced. He wasn't supposed to speak. Earth's role was to observe, offer mediation if asked. They never would. But then the conclave speaker flickered. Not visually, existentially. For a second, it phased, a ripple of unease cracking across its chassis. The Valkyrie don't stutter. They don't blink. They don't bleed. But something in its posture broke, and then the screaming started. No alarms. Just vibration. Like the air inside the station forgot how to sit still. A low pulse rolled through the structure. A tone. Elias's ear implant flared with encrypted garbage. The Zerrin reacted first impossibly fast, drawing crystalline blades from folds in space itself. The Valkyrie surged forward, weapons humming. Something had sabotaged the ceasefire. Within seconds, the chamber was a kill zone. Translation systems died. Words collided like meteors. Lights failed. Fire spilled from the ceiling like rain. Rourke moved by instinct. No orders, no hesitation. He tackled the Zarin scholar to the ground as a Valkyrie drone vaporized the air where she stood. The concussive burst flung metal like confetti. Smoke swallowed them whole, and through it all, the child screamed small, frail, and wrong, not wrong in form, wrong in presence. Rin stood in the center of the chaos, untouched, eyes glowing faintly, with color patterns Elias had never seen in any species. One eye Zarin violet, the other Val, Carry-black. No. One remembered seeing the child enter, and yet he was there, standing still while everything else burned. Rourke found himself breathing smoke through cracked ribs. His armor half melted. He didn't remember pulling the child into his arms. But there he was, warm, trembling, silent now, looking up at him like he knew him. Around them, silence bloomed. Most of the delegates were dead. The floor was cracked. The station groaned under stress. From the smoke staggered three others. First, Dr. Kessa Ilion, robes torn, bleeding from the scalp, a Zarin of some importance. She held a weapon designed not to kill, but to erase consciousness a scalpel for. The soul, her eyes locked on the child with cold panic. Second, Major Thal Valen, tall, composed, too calm. He identified himself as Valkyrie defector, but no one believed him. Not really. His armor still bore conclave etchings. He held a half-destroyed datapad and a sidearm that hummed in warning. Third, the AI embedded in the wall, a neutral entity assigned to oversee the talks, its voice fractured, speaking in broken code. Only 5 remained. The galaxy's future boiled down to 5 lives. A broken station, and one child neither faction should have brought. Yet both seemed desperate to recover. Rourke didn't ask what Rin was. He asked who. The child said nothing. Velen offered only a theory. Rin was a prototype, a fusion, a failed peace treaty in flesh, the result of some forgotten experiment between factions. A living hybrid, a weapon, or a peacekeeper, depending on interpretation. Kessa called it blasphemy. She believed Rin was ancient tech, unearthed by mistake, a failsafe buried when war began. Her voice trembled when she spoke of it, the way priests fear their god's return. The AI offered the only clarity. Rin's neural patterns spanned multiple frequencies. His mind sang in Zarin wavelengths, but his DNA pulsed in Valkyrie code. And something else. Something human. Elias didn't know what. The child was. He just knew they were being hunted. Valkyrie warships broke orbit, unmarked, not sanctioned by the Conclave. Kill teams already en route, and Zarin operatives had vanished from comms, presumed dead or complicit. There would be no rescue, no reinforcement. Only silence and the cold reality of what survival would cost. The child couldn't stay. The station wouldn't last. And the war, the real war, had just begun. He never said yes. He just stood, took the child in one arm, a sidearm in the other, grit in his teeth, pain in his chest. Dr. Elion followed, eyes full of suspicion. Major Velen smiled like a man who'd seen this coming, and the AI whispered coordinates to an abandoned Valkyrie dropship docked in Bay 17. The Chi galaxy was vast. The hunt had begun, and the last person anyone expected to matter, broken human with blood on his hands, had just become the center of everything. The stolen Valkyrie dropship howled through space like a wounded predator. Its hull still shimmered with the polished menace of Conclave design, sleek, sharp, made to inspire dread. But now it bore the grime of betrayal, smeared with blood and static. Alarms screamed with every maneuver. Fuel leaked from a ruptured intake, and the AI navigation kept defaulting to combat protocols. Inside, it was worse. Rourke stood at the helm, sweat on his brow, breath shallow from cracked ribs, hands steady only because they had no choice but to be. His fingers danced over. Controls encoded in Volcari glyphs alien, predatory symbols that snarled when mistranslated. He didn't understand the tech, but he understood war. And war, like fear, spoke a universal tongue. Behind him, Rin sat in silence. The child hadn't spoken since the explosion. He only stared, wide-eyed, watching stars blur past the viewport like streaks of memory. Kessa, Iliun knelt beside a console, rerouting power to shields. Her fingers were stained with coolant, her voice clipped, every word laced with tension. She hadn't trusted Elias since they met, and now she barely hid her disdain. "Human," she muttered, "if you rupture another, field will collapse into a gravitic seam. Better that than end up as scrap under a Volcari warhammer." Elias replied without looking. Velen chuckled darkly from the corner, arms crossed. Not that different in the end. One's faster, cleaner. His presence was a storm cloud in the room. He never sat fully at ease, never stopped watching. Too calm, too ready. Rourke had been around men like him before, men who didn't wait for orders because they already knew the endgame. They'd made 3 jumps already. Each time, a Volcari patrol followed within hours. Someone was tracking them. Or predicting them. Rourke suspected both. Fuel ran low. Morale ran lower. But the worst part, the part that gnawed inside Rourke's chest like a buried scream, was the way the boy remained unchanged. No crying, no questions, no fear. Children were supposed to be afraid. Their first stop was a dead world. Theron 4A, scorched planet cracked open during one of the early Ascendancy Conclave battles. Nothing lived there anymore, not even memory. The ground glowed faintly. Like coals never allowed to cool. They needed fuel, food, and air filters. The old Zirin forward base still had functional caches buried under obsidian dust, guarded by sentry drones half mad from centuries of disuse. The landing was rough. Air burned metallic. Gravity wobbled unpredictably. They moved fast. Rourke led the way with Velen close behind. Kessa stayed near the child, translating interfaces with whispered phrases that shimmered mid-air like spectral ink. Everything was wrong here. The silence pulsed. Time felt off. And then the drones awakened, not like machines, like animals starved, blind, angry. Their targeting arrays blinked awake with keening shrieks. Rourke fired first. Velen followed. The sky lit up with tracer lines and magnetic detonations. Metal screamed as it died. The child cowered behind debris, shielding his head with trembling fingers. And that's when it happened. Rin's eyes changed. No longer just light. They became mirrors. And the air itself bent. Rourke felt it first. A pulling sensation. Not gravity. Not magnetics. Something conscious. The world shifted around the boy. The drones stopped moving. Mid-charge, weapons locked, targeting arrays whirring. And then, as if something unwrote them from history, they fell. Lifeless. Instantly. Rin blinked. The effect vanished. The drones lay scattered like broken toys. No. One spoke. Kessa stepped back. That wasn't tech. Velen narrowed his eyes. It was control. On a scale I've never seen. Rourke looked down at the boy, whose hands trembled, whose breath came fast. "You didn't know you could do that, did you?" Rin said nothing. Later, aboard the ship, they dissected the event. Kessa scanned the child's biosignatures and brainwave patterns. They weren't consistent with any known species. Not fully. She found trinary neural architecture, a consciousness, that existed across 3 simultaneous states: human, Valkyrie, Zarin, each echoing through one, another like chords in a hymn. His body's a vessel, she said. But his mind, that's something else. Rourke found the chip an hour later, embedded in the collar of Rin's tunic. It wasn't just a tracker dot, it was a key. Data encrypted in fractal logic Zarin-coded glyphs shaped like seed structures. Inside, coordinates, visualizations, ancient blueprints etched into raw memory code. The image pulsed on the screen, glowing with the shape of a planet Carathex. Velen reacted instantly. That world is quarantined. Why? Rourke asked. Because it's cursed. Kessa snorted. You don't believe in curses. Velen didn't smile. I do now. Carathex, a planet erased from most star charts, said to be the site of the first true genocide of the war. Both Valkyrie and Zarin forces had battled there, then fled. Something had awakened. Something old. Neither side returned. Now Rin was leading them to it. Or someone had built Rin to lead someone there. Rourke stared at the chip in his hand, veins burning with old fear. What's there? He asked no one in particular. Velen said, a choice. Kessa said, a weapon. And Rin, quiet until now, whispered, the end. Tensions reached a breaking point during the next jump. The ship scraped a dead relay field left over from a failed wormhole experiment. Ion storms battered their hull. Communication dropped. Shields flickered. The fabric of space twisted with half-formed echoes of past. Transmissions. Voices from old wars played over the yell. Comes, screams, orders, final prayers. They were hallucinations or memories. They emerged from the storm. Scarred and silent, Rourke staggered to the mess bay, gripping a bruised shoulder. He found Kessa waiting, pale, angry. You're gambling with all of us, she said. We don't have a choice. We had choices before you, before this boy. He's not what, Rourke? Not dangerous? Not manipulated? He could be an engine for galactic extinction. And you've decided to protect him based on what? A feeling? Rourke didn't speak. His hands trembled. He reminds you of someone, doesn't he? She continued, softer now. Your son. I read the dossier. He died on Velth Prime. Rourke's face didn't change, but his voice cracked. I chose who lived that day. I chose wrong. Don't choose wrong again. He left without replying. The second ambush came aboard a living station. Cairo's Veil, a biological outpost grown from a sentient moon. The corridors shifted. Memory reactive doors opened only when spoken to in truth. The station had no central. Just a consciousness fragmented. Across thousands of rooms. They came looking for parts. A way to patch their failing fuel lines. The Valkyrie came looking for them. Squad of augmented assassins breached the West Wing, quiet, efficient, relentless. Velen fought like a monster. Silent and surgical. Rourke handled suppression fire. Kessa rerouted environmental control to confuse the attackers. Rin vanished. They found him 2 hours later, sitting in the heart of the station alone, surrounded by dead Valkyrie. The station's walls pulsed around him, like a heartbeat. No one asked what happened. In the quiet after, Velen confronted Rourke. You don't understand what's inside that kid. I don't think anyone does. No, but I've seen glimpses. Files buried in black archives. Conclave prophecy nonsense until now. You believe in prophecy? Velen exhaled. I believe in outcomes. That boy's not the weapon. He's the interface. Carathex doesn't fire missiles. It rewrites definitions. What we are. What we can be. And that scares you? Velen stared at him. No, it tempts me. Trust fractured. Kessa began sleeping near the bridge, locking herself in meditative cycles, eyes watching systems. Velen stopped explaining his actions. Rourke spent more time with Rin, trying to teach him basic Earth customs, games, human stories. He told him about chess, not about loss, about courage, and sometimes, in the rare hours where the ship stopped screaming, and everyone seemed just a little less afraid, the boy would smile. A real one. Rourke felt his armor cracking. Not the combat kind, the emotional kind. The one that kept him from remembering what it meant to care again. And that terrified him more than war. The final event before Karathex was sabotage. Someone dashed something triggered a failsafe. Deep in the ship's old Valkyrie logic core. A self-destruct. Countdown began. The ship's AI refused to shut it down. Claimed the parameters had changed. Identity override detected. Threat level. Absolute. They had minutes. Velen tried rerouting code. Kessa tried to deconstruct. The AI's memory loops. Rourke moved to manually eject the core. None of it worked. Then, Rin stepped forward, placed a hand on the console, whispered a word. The system blinked. Paused. And deactivated. No alarms. No detonation. Just silence. The A came back online. And for a moment, its voice was human. I see now, it said. Then nothing more. After that, no one questioned Rin's role, only what it would cost to follow him further. Karathex loomed ahead, a dark wound in the fabric of known space. Blacker than black, quiet, waiting. Rourke stood at the viewport, Rin beside him. What's down there? Rourke asked. The child replied, softly. Truth. They descended toward Karathex in silence. The world filled the viewport, ashen, broken, and humming with eerie pulses beneath fractured tectonic plates. The sky shimmered not with stars, but with dim auroras, residual aftershocks of a planet that had once burned itself into myth. Stolen dropship jolted as atmospheric drag caught it. Eli's Rourke gripped the seat edge, jaw clenched. His gaze drifted to Rin, who stared unblinking at the growing sphere below. Something ancient stirred within the boy, an instinct too precise. For chance, when the ship touched down in the basin of an ancient crater ringed by shattered monoliths, the land answered. Lights flickered within ruined spires. The earth quivered, not as if resisting, but welcoming. The past recognized something in the boy, something it had long buried, but never forgotten. Dr. Kessa Ilian stepped into the dust first. It's not dead, she whispered. This place is thinking. Ruins towered around them, hollow shells of once mighty structures, embedded with dormant crystalline circuits and biomechanical nerves. Rourke moved cautiously. Every echo twisted into something strange, like the stone itself tried to remember language. They followed Rin, who walked with purpose, as if guided. In the planet's heart, beneath layers of rubble and memory, they found the vault. It opened without force. The walls peeled back like petals, responding to Rin's proximity. A deep hallway stretched before them, ribbed with living architecture, veins pulsing faintly with renewed energy. This wasn't just a city, Kessa said. It was a mind. A cradle. Rourke barely heard her. His memories clawed at him. The burning children on Elidar Ix, the bunker he'd bombed to save 1,000, sacrificing hundreds. Every step he took down that corridor felt like wading into that same fire again. Rin approached a dais at the center of the chamber. Tendrils of golden energy reached toward him, not in malice, but reverence. When he touched the central spire, a low resonance thundered through the stone. A holographic apparition flickered to life. Not a face, but a swirling constellation of memories from a long extinct race. A voice not heard but felt. You have returned. The cycle continues. The choice remains. Kessa's hands trembled. Translation coming through this is not just a message. It's a will. They learned the truth. Carifex had been the cradle of a galactic civilization, the Orathi Unity, an empire of knowledge, peace, and evolution. But in time, division fractured their ideals. War consumed their stars. In desperation, they created the Korra machine to erase conflict from the minds of all sentients. By rewriting neural architecture Galaxy-Y. It would not kill. It would not enslave. It would unify through enforced empathy. But such power carried cost. Fearing they would become gods without consent, the Orathi split. One faction buried the core and created a failsafe, a living key, genetically encoded to only function when the galaxy reached the brink again. He was that failsafe, grown in secret, hidden within the conclave as insurance or manipulation. And now, the brink had come again. Velan stepped forward, eyes gleaming with revelation. We've found it. The end of war. The answer we were too primitive to dream of. His hand hovered near his sidearm. Rourke saw it coming. The shift in posture. The desperation. The ambition. Don't, Velan smiled. You still think this is about choice. There is no choice. Peace is worth any cost. The blast came fast just above Rourke's shoulder. A distraction. Rin cried out as metal talons emerged from Velan's wrist brace, wrapping around the boy. In one motion, the ex-Valkyrie officer activated a translocator beacon. Vanishing in a burst of light, the chamber screamed. Lights surged. The walls shook. Kessa shouted something about energy destabilization, but Rourke barely heard her. He raced to the platform, dragging her with him as cracks spidered across the ancient vault. Debris fell like rain. The mind of the Orathi buckled under betrayal. Made it to the surface as the entrance collapsed behind them, swallowing the legacy of an age. Silence followed. Only dust and the echo of things that no longer breathed. They huddled in the broken ship, its systems fried by the planet's outburst. Rourke's hands were bloodied from pulling Kessa through falling stone. Her leg was fractured, but she managed to stabilize it. He sat across from her, silent, shaking, staring at the stars. I should have seen it, he said eventually. Velan, he played me. Kessa didn't answer. Her eyes were distant, calculating. He knew the Orathi, their ethics, their guilt. That data chip in Rin's collar wasn't a mistake. It was bait. You think Rin was built just for this? I think Rin is what the Orathi thought salvation looked like. But they didn't understand choice either. She looked at Rourke, studied him. What will you do when you catch him? I don't know. His voice cracked. I keep thinking. If this machine works, if it really rewrites who we are, would it stop another Eladar Ix? You'd lose everything that makes a person them. Every scar, every lesson. Would you erase yours? He shook his head. I wouldn't, but I might erase someone else's. That's the problem. They stayed. Silent for a long time. Eventually, a rescue signal pinged. One of the Zaren's deep space salvage drones had locked onto their emergency beacon. Help was on the way, but they had to decide what to do before it arrived. Kessa laid back against the wall, pain swimming in her voice. I always thought science could fix things. Knowledge brings peace, but maybe peace can't be manufactured. Rourke turned to her. You still believe that? I don't know anymore. They left the ruins behind, boarded the drone ship in silence, and rerouted its navigation to intercept Velan. The translocator's trace was faint, but Kessa managed to triangulate a potential path and abandoned military relay on the edge of the ecliptic void. The closer they got, the heavier the tension. Velan had a head start. Rin was just a child, but one containing the future of the galaxy in his blood. As they traveled, the atmosphere in the ship thickened. Every vibration of the hull felt like a countdown. Rourke stopped sleeping. The memories of the Eladar bunker returned with vivid cruelty. The crying civilians, the burning corridors. The moment he ordered the strike that turned survival into slaughter, he'd made that call once. One impossible decision to save the many. He never recovered. Now he was being asked to make another. Kessa approached him in the dark hours of artificial night. She brought an old ration pack and sat across from him. "You keep looking back," she said softly. "There's too much behind me. Then maybe look beside you." She took his hand without permission, fingers warm despite everything. "Rin still trusts you. You haven't lost that yet." Rourke's voice was barely a whisper. "What if I do? Then you'll be human." He didn't respond, but the silence between them shifted. They reached the relay station and found the outer perimeter fried. No power, no guards. Inside, flickering lights revealed signs of recent activity makeshift habitation units, power, conduit reroutes, and traces of psychic tech resonance consistent with activation codes. They tracked Velen to the command core. He stood in front of the control altar, surrounded by swirling orthoglyphs and neural resonance pads. Rin was connected. To the system conscious, eyes glowing, suspended midair like an offering. "You're too late," Velen said, not turning. "It's almost complete." Rourke raised his weapon. "Step away." "You think this is a gunfight, Rourke? This is a birth. I'll be the one who ends war. You're stealing free will." Velen turned. His eyes were glassy, his expression near religious. "I'm saving it. No more orphans. No more genocides. No more calculating who dies for what." Rourke stepped forward. "You don't get to decide that." "I do, because no one else would." In that moment, Rin looked at Rourke, not as a soldier, not as a savior, as someone terrified, hovering at the edge of transformation. Something in that gaze cracked the wall inside Rourke. He lowered his weapon. "I won't shoot you," he said, "but I'll stop you." Velen raised his hand to complete the sequence. Kessa slammed her fist into the console. A surge of feedback hit the system. Sparks exploded. Rin fell to the ground, unconscious. Velen lunged. Rourke tackled him. They fought not as warriors, but desperate men, one clawing for control, the other for redemption. Velen's blade cut into Rourke's side. Blood spilled. Pain flashed. But he kept fighting, driving his knee into the ex-officer's gut. With a scream, he drove both of them against the altar. The power source overloaded. The blast threw them both across the room. Velen didn't get up. Rourke did barely. He crawled to Rin, pulling him away from the damaged core as alarms blared. Kessa limped to the console, managing to shut the system down manually. It was over. For now. The descent began with fire. The rebel Zirin vessel, a scavenged war husk long forgotten by most fleets, plummeted through Karathex's volatile atmosphere. Its shield screamed against friction, lighting the twilight clouds in sheets of violet and gold. Rourke stood near the cracked viewport, jaw locked, eyes fixed on the luminous storm below. Beside him, Dr. Ilion tightened her harness. The crew moved with grim precision. No one spoke. The time for fear had passed. They had followed Velen's trajectory to the core structure, a towering spire of twisted stone and alien steel that pulsed faintly against the planet's tortured surface. It looked less like a building and more like a wound in reality alive. Aching, an eternal dot above, the stars flickered violently. The Conclave and Ascendancy fleets had arrived. Dozens of dreadnoughts burned through the upper stratosphere, trading. Plasma volleys and kinetic barrages in a chaotic spiral of destruction. The war had found its last altar, and the gods had come to bleed. The Zarin pilot turned with a rasp, voice trembling. "We won't get another pass. This is it." Rourke nodded, shouldering his rifle less for offense than for symbolism. He was done running. "Take us in." The ship angled hard, piercing the cloud bank. Anti-air fire stitched the sky below. Conclave towers activated defense systems, sending out spider-like drones with trailing limbs of energy. But the rebels were fast, desperate. They found a narrow window and dove. The dropship shuddered as it clipped a spire. Metal screamed. Alarms wailed dot, and impact dot the side hatch blew open, and Rourke tumbled into fire and ruin. He rose amid scattered debris, dragging Ilion from the wreckage. Her arm was bloodied, but she stood. The rebel crew poured out, weapons ready, eyes set on the yawning entrance to the facility ahead, half buried in black sand, half risen like a fang. There was no time for strategy. The structure reacted to their presence. Walls shifted. Corridors formed and retracted like a living puzzle. Organic plating peeled back, revealing nerve-like conduits pulsing with light. Somewhere inside, Velan moved with Rin-driven by fanatic purpose. Ilion tapped her wrist display. The cores, already warming. If he succeeds, the activation could reach across systems within minutes. Then we don't let him succeed. They moved. Inside, the architecture bent around them. Hallways narrowed. Shapes flickered at the edge of perception shadows whispering past, faces half-formed in the walls. Memory reactive stone absorbed. Their steps, replicating them as sound farther down the corridors. A war of illusions and echoes. The first ambush came fast. Velan's loyalists' mercenaries. From fractured Valkyrie clans emerged from the shifting walls, armed with disruptor halberds and neural mines. The firefight was brutal. Rourke's team held their line, but losses mounted. A young Zarin soldier fell beside him, eyes wide, mouth open in silent question. Rourke pulled her body back, face grim. Then silence. The surviving rebels pressed forward. Every meter cost blood. Finally, the corridor opened into a cavernous chamber lit by an impossible light, something not quite visible, more felt. The core. Massive sphere, suspended in tendrils of luminous filament, pulsed above a pit of memory glass. Around it, symbols drifted meter-unreadable, ever-changing, ancient. Velan stood at the edge, hands raised. Rin floated inches above the platform. Limp, his eyes glowing with quiet horror. The boy's limbs twitched as the machine pulled from him memories, instincts, identity. "You're too late," Velan said without turning. "The choice has been made." "No," Rourke stepped forward. "You're making a choice for every sentient being in the galaxy." Velan finally turned, his face half-shadowed, eyes wild. "You think they'd stop on their own? You think peace comes through patience and politics? No. It comes through surrender, offers purity, through control, unity. It erases the sickness of war at the source, the mind. The mind is where change begins," Rourke said, "not where you kill it." Velan advanced, the floor pulsing beneath his feet with each step. "You? Of all people, Elias, you caused a massacre because you waited for empathy. You begged for dialogue when you should have pulled the trigger." "I did pull the trigger," Rourke growled. "And I watched civilians burn because I believed. Could control what came next." He dropped his rifle. "Control is an illusion, but honesty, pain, that's real." He stepped closer. "I see my son's face every night. I see the civilians who screamed my name as they died. I see the men and women who trusted me, who believed I had a plan. And I failed. I failed all of them." Ilin's voice cracked behind him. "Elias?" He continued, eyes locked on Velan. "But I'm still standing. Because failure means I tried. And if this machine is truly designed to alter minds, then it needs someone who remembers what that cost looks like." Velan hesitated. "You won't survive its recalibration. You'll be unraveled." Rourke nodded. "Then let me be the lesson." Before Velan could react, Rourke dove toward the core. The filaments wrapped him instantly. The machine's awareness bloomed cold, endless, timeless. He felt it pierce his mind, sift through memory, measure sorrow. It asked no questions. It simply took. And then the shift. Instead of rewriting, the machine changed course. It stopped looking for patterns in behavior and started broadcasting experience. Pain, joy, rage, love, the raw, unfiltered spectrum of Rourke's human journey. His son's laughter, the smell of burning ozone, the screams of the dying, the taste of whiskey on the night before the bombing. The moment his hands trembled over the engage command and he hesitated, just 1 second too long. Across the galaxy, minds ignited. Aboard warships, Valkyrie and Zarin soldiers dropped there. Weapons. Eyes widened, chests heaved. They were there in Rourke's memory. They saw what he saw, felt what he felt, and it broke them. Not with pain, but with perspective. Commanders barked orders that fell silent. Engineers wept openly. Gunners stopped. Mid-sequence. Even hardened tacticians turned from their consoles, unable to bear the emotional gravity of what passed through them. Velen staggered backward. What have you done? He collapsed, clutching his head as images flooded him, his own childhood memories tangled with Rourke's. The line between self and other disintegrated. I wanted peace. Velen gasped. You wanted power, Ilion said softly. The core began to dim. The filaments loosened. Rourke dropped to the platform, unconscious. The machine receded, its purpose fulfilled, not to control, but to connect. A truth older than war. Silence claimed the facility. Rin stumbled forward, eyes wide. He touched Rourke's chest, a hand trembling. The boy whispered in a language no translator could parse, but its meaning was clear. Thank you. Outside, the sky cleared. The fleets drifted in uneasy stillness, no longer enemies, no longer certain. Above Kareth X, history held its breath. Back inside, Ilion knelt beside Rourke, checking his pulse. Still alive barely. She cradled his head gently, tears streaking through dust and ash. He did it, she whispered. He changed everything. The stars no longer burned with rage. For the first time in centuries, they simply watched. Above, Kareth X, the armadas of the Ascendancy and the Conclave hung suspended in solemn quiet. Where once there had been devastation, now there was silence. A fragile, trembling peace settled across the void, not signed, not declared, but felt. The war had not ended with a weapon, or a treaty, or surrender. It ended with a memory. The fleets turned away. In time, the reports reached every corner of the galaxy. High commands fell into infighting and disbelief. Generals resigned. Alliances frayed, but there was no appetite for battle, no taste for fire. In their dreams, the soldiers saw Elias Rourke's memories. In their minds, they felt the echoes of his pain, his guilt, his hope. Something ancient within them remembered what it meant to feel. The council chambers long abandoned by unity reconvened. Leaders met not with demands, but with quiet confusion. Ceasefires held, skirmishes faded. What remained was a slow agonizing awakening. Peace, not as a command, but as a consequence. Rourke lived. His body bore the weight of sacrifice, but his mind bore more. There were days he could not stand, nights where the ghosts whispered louder than any voice alive. He became a quiet symbol, not of victory, but of transformation. He was not paraded. He was not exalted. But wherever he walked, silence followed. And in that silence, understanding grew. Rin remained by his side at first, no longer burdened by destiny. Just a child again, still strange, still powerful, but free. He didn't speak much. Sometimes, when he touched a stone or a machine, it glowed faintly. But his eyes no longer burned with cosmic weight. He laughed once, and Rourke cried, Dr. Kessa Ilian returned to her archives. Her papers once brimmed with theories on language, consciousness, and power. Now she wrote about empathy, about the invisible cords that tied species together. Her research changed, no longer cold, no longer absolute. She taught others how to listen, how to feel. She never admitted it aloud, but she missed Rourke. Missed the hard edges and the haunted strength. They sent each other messages rare, thoughtful, never long. Major Thalvilan never recovered. His mind, overwhelmed by the torrent of truth, collapsed into silence. He was found wandering the ruins of Carifex, hands outstretched to things no longer there. The machine had not punished him. It had simply shown him everything, and he had no place left to hide. He was placed in care, not prison, not death. Just solitude. In the years that followed, a quiet phrase began to surface. It started in refugee camps, in war-burdened enclaves, on damaged freighters, in the whisper of exiled commanders who had seen too much. We aren't strong because we conquer. We're strong because we remember. It spread without propaganda, carved into stone, etched into walls, folded into songs. And behind it always, the memory of one human who walked into the fire not to win, but to be seen. Rourke returned to Earth one overcast evening. No banners greeted him. No grand receptions. Just wind, salt air, and the quiet hum of a transport. Pad lowering onto an old military dock. He stepped out slowly, his gait still uneven from injury. The terminal had changed since he left. Cleaner, somehow. Older. A child stood at the far end of the dock. She couldn't have been older than 10. Hair braided, eyes wide, uniform 2 sizes too big. When she saw him, she stood straight, raised a hand in salute. Her voice caught in her throat, so she said nothing. Rourke looked at her for a long time. Then he smiled. Just once, soft, honest. Walked past her, boots clicking faintly on the concrete. For a moment he paused, turned, and looked out at the horizon. The sea breathed beneath a gray sky. He closed his eyes. A voice, somewhere deep and toneless, echoed across the stars. One human stepped onto the battlefield, ... and the war ended. Not because we were mighty, because we were willing to be understood. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy listened.